Hey y'all, welcome back. Today I'm going to be giving you a step-by-step on another resin project. I'll be showing you how I took these plain wood paddles and turned them into these beautiful sorority themed paddles that include crushed glass and little pearls. It's going to be quick, but I'm going to try to be thorough. Rewind as need be. So first step for me is always to stain the underside of the piece because I like for it to feel complete on the surface but also on the back side. So you want to make sure you shake it up really good, but also get a mixing stick so that you can get all of the components of the stain that settled at the bottom. And brush it on in a nice thin layer and let it sit for however long, just read your can. It varies. Next, I would typically go ahead and let the stain dry and then tape it. But for this project, I was kind of short on time, so I went ahead and moved forward with the paint, but I made sure not to get it too close to the underside. So I painted the sides, but didn't go all the way to the very edge, just to make sure I didn't get any paint accidentally on the underside. I like to do a semi-thick coat of paint so that it's thick enough to where you can't really see the wood grain underneath. So sometimes that means multiple layers of paint. But you want to do whatever's going to be the primary color for your resin is what you want to do as the base, because sometimes you will see a little bit through the resin and you want the base to be whatever that prominent color is. Then I move forward to taping. The important thing to remember when you're taping is to not let the tape extend beyond the piece. This is important because if you pour the resin and there's a little bit of a lip on the tape, then the resin will actually settle on that lip and create like a bulge on the outer side of your piece, which you don't want. You want it to just be able to run off and drop down completely. So in the curved areas, you just want to make sure you're cutting as close as possible to the edge to again avoid having that lip. And here's a quick look at pretty much everything you're gonna need, just about everything you're gonna need for this project. And yes, I double my gloves because I noticed when I would use just the regular gloves, I would still smell the resin on my hands, so I start doubling up. When preparing to mix your resin, you want to get 2 clear cups and label them according to what is on your resin container, which will usually say A and B, or there will be a white cap and a black cap, so I'll do W and B. And you want to pour each one so that they are visually equal to one another. You'll pour into the big container until it's mixed to the point that there's no striation. The amount of time that takes will vary depending on how much resin you're mixing at that time. So for instance, the amount that you saw me pour, I would probably mix for about 5 minutes, just making sure to scrape the sides throughout the whole time that I'm mixing. That's a very important step as well. Sorry, I'm running behind. Next, you'll get a different cup for each color that you want to use and add in a few drops of whatever the paint is. The more drops you do, the thicker the resin is going to be, which also means the faster it's going to cure. So just keep that in mind. Your working time reduces the more paint that you add to the resin. You'll give that a mix and then pour it on your piece and spread it out. I like to heat it and then blow it once I get the majority of it covered. When you use the heat gun, you want to make sure that you're moving it constantly, not leaving it in any particular place for too long because you don't want to scorch the resin. And then using the blow dryer is just going to help move that resin and make it spread more evenly across the entire piece. I really like to add dimension, which I usually do by adding a slightly darker shade of whatever my main color is. So in this instance, I did a slightly darker red, and you'll see that I'm going to blow it around and eventually it's going to start spreading and you'll see just subtle variations of color throughout the entire piece. Sidebar, the more resin you add, the more it's going to blow around and move and blend together. So if it's not moving the way you want it to, just add more of each color or one of the colors and you'll notice that there'll be a lot more movement in it. As you can see now, there are the different tones, subtle but noticeable variations in the red, and then I come back with the white. For this white, I chose to use a mica powder. So when you use a white resin on top of the red resin, if you blow too much, it will become really muddy and start looking really pink. I didn't want that to happen with this piece, so I went with a mica powder, which is going to keep its true color a little bit better than doing the white paint. I can blow it a little bit more without it turning pink. I also didn't want the white to be very pronounced. I wanted it also to be subtle because I wanted the overall design, the pieces cut out from the Cricut, I wanted them to be the most dominant, the focal point of the piece. So as the resin is curing, I hop over to the Cricut, cut out my designs. And of course you have to pick each and every little piece. Then you'll gently remove the outskirts of all of the pieces And you get something that looks like, drum roll. Okay, not yet. This. So all of the pieces have been picked at this point. So if you're familiar with the Cricut, you'll know that then you use the transfer tape and get everything put on your piece layer by layer. I then go in and add my crushed glass. Now for certain designs, I won't glue them down. On this particular one, I wanted to make sure that they aligned in a particular way. So I use E6000 glue to create my outer border and then place each one by hand to create the outer line that I wanted. And I did that for both areas that get the crushed glass. In situations where you have a little bit more flexibility with where the pieces land, you don't necessarily have to do it this way, but this is just my preference. If I don't want them to extend beyond a particular point, I'll go ahead and glue the perimeter or glue the bottom layer. I did not record the pearls, but I put those on one by one by one by one, making sure to have a good mixture of the larger, medium, and small pearls. Then this step is your flood coat. You want to make sure that you, same process as before with mixing the resin, equal parts, pour it evenly across each piece, then let it cure for a full 24 hours. After it's had time to cure, I go in with a metallic paint marker, usually silver and gold, and I just hit certain little pieces on the resin to give it a little bit more sparkle. I personally like to pay attention to higher points, but also find some low points just to give it, again, a little bit more dimension. Now we have the gilding. This is the part that really makes it like super pretty to me. You want to shake it up really well because the gilding is made of some sort of red pigment. So if you don't mix it well, then they won't combine and you will still have that separation of gold and red. So mix it up good so that you get a nice true gold like you see on the back here. Then I take a small brush and just slightly dab it along the edges. For larger pieces, I will make this outer layer thicker, but because this piece was so small, I didn't want the gold to overpower it. So I just did really pretty much just the outer crushed glass pieces. And you want to be careful on this step because if you put too much on the brush, it will drop on your piece and you do not want to deal with those issues of trying to get it off. So just make sure you're wiping your brush on the edge each time you dab it. Once that has had time to dry, then we're at the end part, y'all. You just want to take your heat gun to heat the tape, which is also going to soften the resin on the outer edges, and you'll be able to peel the tape off and get those little drops that form when you're pouring the resin. They're going to come off with the tape and you can get a clean edge. Then I don't know what this metal sanding stick thing is, but I use this tool to scrape off whatever little bit of a rim that you will have when you take the tape off. This part isn't really necessary, it's just a part of my OCD. It just makes me feel a little bit better when it's perfectly smooth on the edge where the wood meets the resin. Then you want to add your hanging hardware if you're going to be hanging it like we are in this situation. It's probably best practice to put something soft underneath it, but in this situation, I didn't worry about it, but I mean, best practice is to do that, just to make sure nothing accidentally scratches the surface. Then we finish with, of course, adding our logo. We cannot let a piece leave the shop without getting our stamp of approval on it. And voila, y'all, this is the end result. I loved how these turned out. They were so pretty. They turned out just like the rendering that I put together for my supporter, and I just was blown away. I'm always blown away. Even though I do it myself, I'm blown away by how pretty this stuff looks at the end. I do have to pat myself on the back. I hope you like how these turned out just as much as I did, and let me know if you have any questions. Leave them in the comments and I will get back to you. Thanks for watching, y'all. Bye.